What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Wise here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Mikael Dia of Funnelytics. You can check him out at funnelytics.io. And Mikael, before I formally introduce you, I always like to point out other episodes of the podcast people should check out. Since this is part of the SaaS series, some other great guests to check out. Sujin Patel, founder of Mailshake. They help with email outreach and sales engagement. Talks about how he built the company to over 70,000 users. That was a really good one. One of the co-founders of Pipedrive. I had them, Mikael, back when they had like 10,000 customers. I think they have over 100,000 now at Pipedrive. And a big thank you to Leanna Ling, who's CEO of AdSkills. They're a company that trains media buyers. She said, you must have Mikael on the podcast. So thanks, Leanna, for the suggestion. Another one was Wade Foster, founder of Zapier. He talks about the journey. And check out many, many more episodes on InspiredInsider.com. This episode is brought to you by Rise25. Rise25, we help businesses give to and connect to their dream partnerships and relationships. And how do we do that? We do that by helping you run your podcast. We're an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. And we do the accountability, the strategy, and then the full execution. So Mikael, we call ourselves kind of the magic elves that run in the background to make it look easy for the host and the company so they can create amazing relationships and run their company, and we can do everything else. For me, the number one thing in my life is relationships, and I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. And I found no better way over the past decade to profile the people and companies I most admire on this planet and share with the world what they're working on. So if you thought about podcasting, you should. If you have questions, go to rise25.com or email us at support@rise25.com. I'm excited to introduce Mikael Dia. He's a digital marketing expert and the founder of Funnelytics, which is a leading analytics and funnel mapping platform. And Mikael has transformed how businesses understand and optimize their customer journeys, and that's using data-driven strategies. So Funnelytics helps to track, report, and optimize your marketing funnels using a visual canvas. And I'll do a screen share. We'll kind of poke around the website a little bit. And that they pull data from all different types of platforms to get the most accurate results. The software helps companies make faster decisions and improve client results. You can check it out at funnelytics.io. Mikael, thanks for joining me.
Oh, man. Thank you for the intro. Thank you for having me. I am very, very excited to chat with you.
You have a really interesting journey. We'll kind of go in reverse order because I want to hear about Funnelytics first, but you've started other companies, language learning companies. You had an agency as well. This is kind of where Funnelytics come out of. But let's just start with Funnelytics and what you do.
Yeah, I mean, you did a really good job kind of describing it, to be honest. We've basically built an analytics-powered whiteboard is kind of how I like to say it. Think of Miro or your Lucid Charts or your diagramming tools, where on the canvas, I can go and add my traffic sources. I can go and add my pages, my different actions. I can connect them all together, but then I can click a button and overlay all of the data right there on top. And people can see exactly what's working, what's not, basically the flows that are driving customers to their business. So a lot of times people have no clue what's actually generating them customers. Like, what are the paths that those people are taking? And when you use a tool like Google Analytics, or you build spreadsheets or charts or graphs, it's really, really hard because it's like linear. It's columns and rows. And with Funnelytics, because it's a canvas, think of it as a whiteboard. I could just visualize that flow right there on that canvas.
So if you're listening to the audio version, there is a video version. You can check it on YouTube, and we're on the Funnelytics site here. And you can see old way versus the Funnelytics way. Can you walk me through a little bit about what we're looking at with the Funnelytics way here?
Yeah. So I think it's important, in order to understand the Funnelytics way, you have to understand what people do today to plan, measure, and optimize the customer journey. So we really think about customer journeys or marketing funnels in those three buckets, right? I need to go and plan out the strategy. What exactly are all the different touch points? What are the pages, the emails, the automations, the traffic sources, the retargeting, all of those things that we're going to put together in order to turn a stranger to become a customer, right? So that's the planning phase. And a lot of times during the planning phase, I also want to put together some forecasts and say, well, if I spend this much and these are my kind of conversions, this is the outcome, right? Then I need to kind of, once I launch this and I actually build my pages and do all these things, I now need to measure the results of this. I need to go and log into Facebook. I got to log into Google Analytics. I've got to build a spreadsheet, maybe put together a dashboard using Looker Studio or some other, dashboarding tool to kind of look at my reports and my numbers. But I've got to measure the performance of this strategy in some way, shape, or form. And then the challenge comes around, okay, well, what do I do in order to optimize? It's great to have data, but I need to draw conclusions from that data, get insights from that data so I can act and actually make some changes and some stuff. So typically I'm going to have a data analyst or somebody who understands, how to translate this data into this strategy. And then they're going to come up with some recommendations, and maybe they're only going to look at a page or whatever it is. Well, with Funnelytics, because we basically allow you to plan on a canvas, so you have that planning whiteboard in a sense, but then because you can overlay the data right on top of that same strategy, you can just basically overlay numbers on top of your actual strategy. Right? So now I can see very quickly how many people go this way versus this way. What are my conversion rates? Where are people dropping off on this particular strategy? Because all I'm doing is overlaying numbers on top of this particular strategy.
Got it. So when we're looking at here, there's Facebook here, and so you'll see overlaid. Okay, there's X number of people going in here. X number of people are actually clicking here, and then X number of people are actually going to check out and then paying. Is that
you got it?
Is that
exactly
accurate?
Right? So I can very much see, and then I can isolate. Let's say, hey, you know what? Let's isolate Facebook or let's isolate Google Ads to see what exactly those people, because there's going to be some people that go one way and a certain percentage that go another way, and I can kind of really filter that data and analyze that data to really start to make some smart decisions.
Yeah. So kind of like a strategy, measure, and then optimize.
You got it.
Yeah. There's a really good post on your site. I want to encourage people to check it out here. So if people go to funnelytics.io and they have a blog page, this is a customer journey mapping. So I thought this was really very, very thorough and goes into great detail on the elements of the customer journey, and even kind of what you were talking about, breaking up some of the strategy piece and, the behavior, the attitudes, experience, and everything like that. This is the 5-step guide here. People can check this out. One of my favorite parts of this, because I always forget about it, is this part, which is customer journey maps. From the awareness to the interest to the purchase to the retention to the advocacy. So I just want to encourage people, check this out. This is really, really as thorough as I've seen as far as a customer journey mapping.
Cool. I'm glad you found it useful.
So the idea, okay, you were running an agency.
Yep.
Talk about what you wanted, and then you created the solution for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's exactly what I just said, right? I used to do this for all of my clients. So what we would sell on the agency front was these kind of funnels, these customer acquisition engines or systems or funnels, whatever fancy word you want to use. But we would map out all of the pages. Sometimes it would be a webinar with an opt-in to a webinar and then email follow-ups, and then that sends people to a sales page. And sometimes it would be something slightly different. Maybe it would be a ads over to an opt-in for a downloadable PDF, and then there's a quick upsell, whatever, right? So we would sell people strategies that would help them acquire customers using kind of paid advertising. And in order to sell my clients, I would map out this strategy on a whiteboard. I would sometimes translate it into like a little PowerPoint. I actually went to Fiverr and got little icons designed, little icon packs of like, oh, this is an opt-in page. This is a webinar page. This is a Facebook icon. And then I would kind of just map this so that I could explain to my client, this is the strategy we're going to deploy for you, right? And what I found is when I would show them that strategy, when it was visual, it clicked in their mind. Like, okay, I understand how you're going to help me get clients. It's less about, oh, you're going to create 5 blog posts, or you're going to do this every month for me. And you're going to, this is an actual system that's going to help you go and convert these strangers into customers. But then when it came to like actually looking at the data, that's when I struggled, because now I'm logging into Facebook. Facebook's telling me it got 20 conversions when in fact it didn't. And then Google says it also got some odd number of conversions. And Google Analytics says there was actually only 10 conversions total. And then my CRM says this, and Stripe says that, and my page builders say this. And then I would build spreadsheets to try to aggregate this data and see what's really what. And then when I would report back to my clients, I would report in a kind of dashboard format. So I would show them a chart or a graph, and I would show, and it didn't click for them. It didn't make much sense. So again, the idea was, man, wouldn't it be cool if I could just have a digital whiteboard that allowed me to visualize this strategy and then click a button and just overlay these numbers on top? I mean, how hard could that be? Turns out,
famous last words.
Yeah, exactly.
like millions of dollars of investment later. Can't be that hard.
Exactly. After millions of dollars of building a product and realizing, oh, turns out analytics powered whiteboard is not that simple after all. So, but that's kind of how this started.
So your agency business, you were doing paid ads and then building the funnels behind those paid ads for people. And then at what point, and then you obviously are creating this because it makes for a better, client experience, also stickiness, also retention, all the same reasons why people would want to use it for themselves. At what point did you decide, okay, I should really start a separate business out of this?
Yeah. So I started building the tool and I hired a developer near the beginning of 2017. Maybe it was near the end of 2016. I don't know. It was somewhere around there, and it was like part-time, right? I was running my agency full-time, and it was just, again, I was just using profits from my agency to pay this developer on the side. And I remember it was around like maybe October-ish, September, October, I went to a mastermind with a friend of mine, and I showed him the prototype of our mapping tool with the kind of idea of like the analytics, but the analytics was not at all ready. Like it was a prototype at that stage. And I showed him the mapping tool. I showed him you could drag and you have like this way to map out strategies and stuff. And he was like, man, this mapping tool is really sweet. And I was like, yeah, but like, forget the mapping tool. The mapping is just the way to visualize the analytics. Like, who cares about the actual mapping itself? Like, anybody could build a mapping tool. He's like, yeah, but it's really cool and very easy. And I'm like, okay. He's like, I think you should give it away for free and then sell people on the analytics. So I was like, actually, this is not necessarily a bad idea. I don't really care about the mapping tool. I just want to visualize the data. I'm a nerd that way. Hence why it's called Funnelytics. It's not called Funnel Map. But so that's what I did. I was like, okay, let me do that. In December of 2017, I started advertising the mapping tool, and people signed up to our mapping tool. I spent about 10 grand or so, just literally ads straight to the mapping tool. In fact, you see here, if people are watching the video, I have this book here called Funnelytics Chronicles. That was a book that I wrote from our first year of launch of Funnelytics. But I spent about 2 months just advertising this mapping tool, and about 6,000 people signed up, and I put everybody into a Facebook group. And again, I was still running my agency, so I was using that Facebook group to kind of share how I was growing my agency, why I built this tool, and I would like tease little sneak peeks of like the vision of Funnelytics, right? Having the analytics aspect of things. About 3,000 people out of the 6,000 who signed up to the mapping tool ended up, coming into the Facebook group. People were raving about this, mapping tool, how easy it was to kind of show clients these things. And I decided to open up a beta group of the analytics. And again, it was like, it wasn't even beta, it was alpha. Like the analytics just, it really didn't work, to be completely honest. It kind of worked, but not really. And I was like, let me see if people really are going to buy this. But instead of going the SaaS model and, charging, let's say $99 a month, knowing that, okay, this doesn't really work, people are going to churn after a month, I was like, maybe I'll just get them to buy for lifetime this access to this analytics tool. We're going to call them our founding members, and we're going to charge them $700. And I kind of expected to sell maybe 100 of them in like, I don't know, a month and a half, 2 months. I don't know. It turns out about 300 people bought in 48 hours, and we made $200,000. And that kind of made me realize that, okay, I mean, it took me a really long time to make $200,000 in my agency. 48 hours.
You're onto
pretty
something.
Cool. Yeah, I'm onto something. So I kind of kept that going. I did it again in March. We made kind of another 200,
Like kind of a
250.
launch of like a lifetime value.
Yeah, another launch of the lifetime deal.
People love the lifetime deals.
Oh man, do they ever?
AppSumo.
I've learned a lot about lifetime, and I've learned a lot about running a SaaS company and selling lifetime and whether or not it's smart. And there's so many things I could talk about, like that backfired on that front. But in general, in that
would you
first
do it
year,
again though, knowing what you know now, or how would you do it differently from a lifetime perspective?
No, I probably wouldn't do a lifetime. I would do. I guess it depends. I guess it depends on what the product is and what is the ongoing expenses associated with it. So for us, we sold lifetime to an analytics tool. We had people install Funnelytics on like, I think one of our lifetime buyers ended up installing it on RyderCup.com, which is like the PGA Tour. And it was during the weekend, and like instantly like 12 million people over the course of Friday, Saturday, Sunday, like and we had to up our servers, and just they crashed everything. And literally just the increase in our server costs like was like triple what this person just paid us. Right.
So maybe you do lifetime with like an asterisk or something. It's lifetime.
Yeah.
If you go above 1 million something, then
exactly.
we're charging you.
Certainly I would do something like that. And I would probably also do, instead of lifetime, it doesn't sell as well, but I would do a heavily discounted yearly. And the reason for that is because now people are, it gives you some indication of recurring revenue. You get recurring revenue from it. You're not supporting people forever. If they stop paying, you don't have to support them anymore. But I mean, can I complain? We made $1.5 million in our first year, another $2 million in our second year, kind of with this lifetime model. So it was what bootstrapped this company. It's what allowed us to kind of get off the ground. And then I switched, and then churn came, and that's a whole other story.
So I know at some point in the journey you raised money, but let's still talk about the bootstrapping phase for a second.
Sure.
And you bootstrap. Now you have an influx of cash. What do you build first? Like, what features do you decide to build in the beginning?
I think looking back, I very much had tunnel vision of what I wanted versus what I was seeing the market was responding to. And I think if I would have not been so focused on what I wanted, we could have grown, at least from a monthly recurring revenue standpoint, we could have grown much faster. We could have built something that was a little bit more aligned with the type of customer that was coming in. I was building something for an advanced marketer, yet I was speaking to a beginner marketer or beginner agency, right? And what they wanted as out of the product was much more on the mapping side, much more about the sales tool aspect of things, and much less about the analytics aspect of things. But because I was so, tunnel vision on building the tool I wanted, it kind of created some barriers. So I spent most of my efforts and most of our money on the analytics front, building features that allowed you to look at your data, filter the data, that kind of stuff, which again, it's in the name, it's called Funnelytics. I literally took the word funnel and analytics and mashed them together. That's how creative I was. But looking back, again, our main customers at the time were not these advanced marketers who were looking at data to that degree.
So then what would you have built sooner?
I don't know if so now if I look at our core customers, they are much more performance driven marketers. Our market has caught up to the product vision to some degree. So today I feel very fortunate that we focused on the analytics front because we've got an incredible product. However, in the early days, I think that if I would have kept going down the path of sales enablement tool, like a tool that forget the analytics and the measuring aspect of things, but more so, what could I do to help you on the planning side, on the measuring, on the sales side, forecasting, basically, being able to put together proposals, that kind of stuff that's more centered around the sales component as opposed to the retention component. I think we would have had a stickier product in the early days. I also think that it would have kept speaking to that customer whose biggest challenge is customer acquisition, less so the challenge of customer retention, showing numbers, proving my worth to my clients type of thing.
Mikael, talk about, we'll talk about churn for a second. I joke around with my SaaS friends. I'm going to get a t-shirt that says "Got churn," the question mark, just have them wear it. But the churn, what are some of the things that you did along the way to make it stickier? Like you said, I have a really good episode with Gavin Zaklinski, who started Acuity Scheduling, who then he ended up selling it. But he knew the churn point. He over time, he figured out these churn points and just kind of chipped away slowly at the pieces that he knew would create a stickiness and have them stay on longer. So I'm curious, from your journey, what are some of those things you learned from a churn perspective, and then what you embedded into the product to make it stickier and overcome those churn points?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing that we found was on the analytics side, if I separate out the mapping side and the analytics side, because they're really kind of two separate products with the same user interface in a sense, and two separate avatars, two separate kind of ideal customer profiles for them. So let's focus on the analytics.
Some people are more heavy users on the mapping side, and some people are more heavy users on the analytics. Obviously, you need the mapping to do the analytics, but there's some people, are you saying they basically just love the mapping features and they'll just kind of geek out and use those?
Correct. We have some people who literally have never turned on analytics once and will only use the mapping because they're using it as a sales tool. They're using it as a way to present a strategy, right? It's a strategy mapping tool. While there's others who use Funnelytics strictly on the analytics side because it's an easy way to get answers to questions because I can just drag and drop and connect two things together and I get an answer. But they'll very rarely use it from a strategic standpoint. They'll do it as an analysis tool almost. Like, just a simpler Google Analytics because it's a canvas. So very, very different buyer personas. And I think that that's something that I needed to figure out is like, who is the user and what are they really using it for? In my mind, it was always a cycle. You plan, then you measure, then you optimize, right? That's how I ran my agency. So I built a tool that allowed me to do all three of those things, in one user interface. But what I've realized is a lot of people only care about the planning. A lot of people only care about the measuring, and other people only care about the kind of analysis optimization aspect of things. So that was a big thing. We needed to get super, super, super clear on who are we building this for and who do we care is going to be sticky, right? So in the early days, we were selling Funnelytics for kind of $99 a month. And the net churn overall was like 8% month over month, right? So people were sticking for about a year, give or take. So lifetime value about $1,200. And when we really broke it down, though, we had people who wanted it only for the analytics. $99 a month was actually really cheap for them, and it was a bargain. And then we had people who wanted it only for the mapping, and $99 a month was actually pretty expensive because now they're comparing it to like an $8 a month diagramming tool or something along those lines. So that was the first thing. And then the second level was, why are you, or who are you using it for? So now we took our ICP and broke it up into, okay, we've got these two kind of core components, but then we broke it up and saw, okay, well, there's actually people who do it for clients, and then there's people who actually do it for their own business, right? And that now created a separation and another prong on that kind of ICP identification. So the people who were doing it for clients had a very, very different use case, even on the analytics, than on the people who are doing it in-house. For example, the people who are doing it for clients, they cared a little bit more about reporting. They care a little bit more about just how do I present this easily and quickly, versus the ones who are doing it in-house cared more about how do I get the answer to this question so I know what to optimize. So a slightly different job to be done in a sense. And we dove deep into that as a company. So ICPs was a really key component to understanding churn. The second component was deciding what are the bottlenecks for the ICP that we want to go after. So what we started realizing is, okay, well, the mapping guys, churn is there and we could create something that's a little stickier, but ultimately it's not really in line with the vision of the company. It is called Funnelytics after all. It is meant to be an analytics tool. We would probably have to reduce the price point, versus on the analytics front, if we find the right performance marketers, actually we could charge $500 a month. We could charge $1,000 a month because now we're competing with other true performance and analytics product. However, as we started breaking that down, we started realizing, okay, well, these are the two biggest barriers for them. Number one, how do I set up tracking? And number two, how do I make sure that the data is accurate, right? Those are basically the two biggest bottlenecks that we found on that front. So how do we start to reduce churn? Well, in the short term, as we were starting to move up market and we focused on the analytics front, as my team was building these features that, integrations, that kind of stuff to make it easier to integrate the platform, we used a lot of kind of account management and customer success to have different touch points, help them get onboarded properly, help them with the client setup, train them in the right way. So it became less of a product-led approach, a little bit more of a kind of success-led approach, right? So that's kind of how we started really
There's more
doubling
of like
down.
a kind of like a white glove type of situation. It's not like, hey, sign up, good luck. It's like, oh, sign up, and we'll have some,
Onboarding, all that.
specialists to help actually get you through setting it up and get you through the biggest obstacles.
You got it, right? And that really is how we started chipping away at churn. Is we started understanding who are the customers. And then the biggest thing throughout all of this, and kind of what I'm trying to get to with this kind of thought process of segmenting all these customers and creating these micro segments, we really had to get clear on who are we building this product for, because most people try to solve churn by focusing on the customers that churn. We started realizing that in order for us to solve churn, which by the way we still haven't solved, churn is never zero. But the reality is, the more we focus on the customers who are using the product and actually are sticking, and the more we make it even stickier and better and easier for them, the easier it is for us to go and find more of those people. I have a good example. One of my our former COO, who's still a very good friend, went on to do his own kind of thing. We were chatting the other day, and he's like, Mikael, I use Funnelytics every single day, all the time. But you got to realize something. I'm a huge marketing nerd. And by the way, you're also a huge marketing nerd. You built a tool for marketing nerds that you're trying to sell to everyone, right? But if you keep thinking about how do I get more marketing nerds, then now the churn problem goes away, because you're really only looking at churn in this little sphere of marketing nerds, right? Who love data, who love to kind of dive into the nitty-gritty numbers and that kind of stuff. And now the churn is actually close to zero because they actually love the tool. So we got to start thinking about where is our ideal customer segment, and that's really where product market fit comes in. Now, do you have a proper go-to-market motion? Do you have a proper way to go and acquire more of those marketing nerds, in a sense, and ignore everybody else, right? And that's kind of the thought process around.
No, I appreciate you walking through that. That makes sense, because you could have gone the route of, okay, we could separate this product. It's $30 a month if you just want the mapping tool, and it's going to be X amount for the analytics tool, but you really didn't want to attract and compete in that, and that wasn't an ideal customer for you, right? And so it seems like you went the other route and go, well, that's not really who we're focused in on. You really zeroed in on who's ideal, and then, obviously built the tool and the features for that, which is interesting, because you could have, taken low-hanging fruit, I guess, and be like, hey, like, we have a bunch of these mapping tools, we can have a separate price for it, but then you would attract a totally different type of.
Oh, I think that's the key, right? Is you end up attracting a very, and we tried selling the mapping tool, and we tried kind of going down that path of separating Funnelytics Map versus Funnelytics Performance, and we called it different kind of things. But what we realized is people didn't jump, right? It didn't bridge the gap, even though it's the same user interface. We kind of thought, okay, well, if it's the same user interface, if we have really clever upsells and things in the app, some people will go and jump to the other side. But because it's such a different job to be done, because it's such a different mindset, and it's actually a different person, they never did. So now it's just like, well, we're just marketing two completely separate products under the same brand, which creates confusion. Now people come to us and they're like, oh, I thought you were a mapping tool. And it's like, or oh, I didn't know you did analytics, or, and it's like, now the message to the market becomes very, very confusing.
At what point do you decide, okay, I'm going to raise money for this? Because obviously you did a great job bootstrapping. You sold a lot, in that phase. Why? At what point you said, okay, I need to raise money?
I think I made a a mistake as to when I raised money for Funnelytics. To be honest, I'll tell you the reason why I raised money. We had a very, very strong, obviously we did a couple $1 million in the span of 18 months. And it was my 5-year wedding anniversary with my wife. And we decided to go to St. Lucia for our 5-year wedding anniversary. I had just actually published this little book here. So this would have been 2019, around like, I don't know, summer of 2019, somewhere around there. And I brought one book with me. And that book was called, I don't know if I have it here. Sometimes I want to throw away this book because it gives me nightmares. It was called Blitzscaling by Reid Hoffman, who is the founder of LinkedIn and a prominent VC in Silicon Valley, right? And in that book, it basically says, if you have a unique idea where it's a kind of winner takes all type of market, where basically, a Facebook, for example, where people will only use one particular solution to solve this problem. If you do not blitzscale, somebody who has more money and is bigger is going to take your idea and eat you alive. And to blitzscale, you need to go raise a whole lot of money and you need to scale. And for some reason, this, like, as I was reading this, I'm like, here we are. I wrote this book. It's bootstrapped. We have a really nice little community here. We're showing some traction, obviously, on the revenue side, but not necessarily on the kind of scalability SaaS side. But at least in general, we're showing some pretty good traction. I'm starting to get paranoid of like, man, I have a pretty unique idea. It is a winner takes all in this analytics space, and these engineers are really expensive. So maybe I need to go and raise. So that's ultimately was the tipping point of me saying, yeah, I'm going to go and raise. Because up until then, I had spoken to a couple VCs because they were interested in what we were doing, but I wasn't convinced yet. And that was basically the day where I was like, I told my wife, I was like, I think I need to raise money. I think we need to raise money and take Funnelytics to the next level. And in hindsight,
had you stopped doing the agency work at that point? Like you only focused on?
I finished my
Funnelytics?
agency work. I had started winding down all of my clients around 2018. I still probably had a handful of clients in 2019 while I was still doing that. I had a team, but it wasn't. I wasn't focused on it. I wasn't growing it. I wasn't trying to kind of take the agency anywhere. It was kind of slowly winding down. And my personal income was coming from Funnelytics.
What about raising money can be a full-time job, right? What's a lesson? And by the way, I want to point out, people can check out my business partner, John Corcoran, has a podcast, Smart Business Revolution. So he had the co-author of Blitzscaling on. People can check that out. Chris, he didn't have Reid Hoffman on, but he had Chris, the co-author, and it's a great episode talking about what you're demonstrating in the book. So check that episode out. So what's a lesson you learned from raising money? Because that's a serious undertaking.
Yeah, I mean, raising money is no different than selling a product. You're just selling a product to a different buyer, which that buyer is an investor and the product is the company, right? And ultimately, that is what you're in the business of. So you are doing a pitch just like you would do a sales pitch, and you're doing follow-ups just like you would do follow-ups to sell your software. And it's just a matter of understanding, what does this buyer want? Well, this buyer wants something, a company that has the potential to scale significantly and get them a massive return. So part of your job is to create a pitch that shows them that, right? Obviously, you have to back it up with the numbers and all that stuff, and they're always going to have objections, et cetera. But that's how I approached fundraising. I just approached it as, I'm selling something to somebody, and that's just the persona, and that's just the product. Now, I think one of the things that I think was an interesting process is I think truthfully, I've reflected on this a lot. Subconsciously, I don't think I never really wanted to raise. And even though on the surface I did, and I told myself I would, so I didn't really go down the road of like, let's call it Canva, for example, Melanie Perkins, who's raised a lot and has grown Canva to billions of dollars. And she famously kind of said that she's had hundreds of pitches and hundreds of no's and all that stuff. Like for me, it wasn't that. For me, I had one chat with one VC prior to going on vacation. This was when I was still in kind of lifetime mode. They weren't interested in the lifetime, but they were super impressed with how much money I was able to generate from a marketing standpoint. So they were super impressed by me as a founder. I just hadn't proven to them the recurring revenue side. So after I went away on that vacation, now I kind of came back with the mindset of, okay, I need to raise. Who's my lowest hanging fruit? Just like a customer, who's your lowest hanging fruit to close? These guys, well, this is their biggest objection. So let me go and solve that right now. So I went and switched from lifetime to yearly and started doing monthly plans. And of course, all of the momentum just carried on, and we now started stacking monthly recurring revenue. And of course, I went back to them and said, hey guys, you guys were excited by me. Here's me solving the one thing that you needed me to solve. So let's sign a deal, right? And sure enough, they're like, okay, they signed a deal, and I went and took that momentum to find a couple other VCs to stack on and kept going, right? So I didn't get a whole lot of no's. I didn't have to line up a whole lot of pitches. I didn't go through that process, which I think maybe if I did, it would have changed probably some of my mindset around like, do I really want to do this and raise money, or do I want to keep bootstrapping and enjoying kind of how I'm building this business my way? Because once you have VCs, it changes how you approach your business. Subconsciously, it's changed how I approach my business. So yeah.
Mikael, I love how you think so rationally through and make it so simple. It's not easy, but it's like, oh, I just need to solve their objection. And then that's it, right? So when you raise money, obviously they want you to run as fast as possible. What do you decide to do with the money? You hiring? Like, what do you actually then, when you're out of the gates, you get the money? What are you running towards? How do you use it?
So I use the money. I knew that like the way we built Funnelytics 1.0 was not scalable from an analytics standpoint. And we knew that in order for me to kind of scale, it was about the analytics, not about the mapping tool. Certainly the VCs didn't invest in a mapping tool that's not defensible. It's too easy to replicate. They invested in kind of the analytics aspect of things. And I knew that that's where I wanted to go, but I also knew that the way we had built Funnelytics 1.0 was not scalable. So I used the money to build Funnelytics 2.0. And that was kind of my first round. My first round was hiring an engineering team, rebuilding Funnelytics from the ground up to be more of a analytics first platform while still maintaining kind of the visual canvas element of things. And slowly starting to prove out that we can go up market. So building our kind of sales team and showing that, hey, we can sell this tool, even though it's still on 1.0, if we have some account management and a little bit more of a handheld approach, a white glove approach, we can start, instead of charging $99 a month, we can start charging $500 a month, maybe $1,000 a month, and seeing where that kind of fit. So that's what we use the money for. But then I hit a massive roadblock on the engineering. My lead engineer, like my 3 lead engineers left the company. And because we went from, again, bootstrapped, having a lot of fun, to now quarterly meetings. What's our churn numbers? How do we, basically it changed the mindset. So those 3 lead engineers ended up leaving. it basically for about 8 months, we were kind of in this like engineering dead zone. Hired a bunch of agencies to help, spent a whole lot of money. Nothing really moved, and it was actually pretty terrible until I found my VP of engineering, and then we kind of rebuilt. But at that stage, this is around end of 2021. By that point, Funnelytics I was out of cash. Like I basically used most of that money. So how do I raise more? Well, you go back to your lowest hanging fruit, which is your existing VCs, and you go and say, hey, here's what I've been able to achieve with the money you've given me. Here's what I need in order for me to take this to the next level. I need to launch Funnelytics 2.0. I need to this, and this. So you guys want to double down? Yes or not? Or yes or no, right? And sure enough, they doubled down, right? So we launched Funnelytics 2.0. And then we started really kind of ramping up our sales, ramping up that process. And we hit another big roadblock. We basically by the end of kind of 2022, 2023, we were burning too much money. We weren't scaling fast enough to hit our Series A, but I raised 2 rounds. So I diluted myself quite a bit in the process. So we weren't we'd raised kind of this post-seed round, but we weren't at the metrics really needed to hit a proper Series A, specifically when we're looking at our Funnelytics 2.0 product, where the value of these customers is higher. In general, our total MRR was pretty up there, but for that core segment, it wasn't, right? And our 1.0 MRR was kind of going down, our 2.0 MRR was going up. So we kind of got to a stage where we had to make some decisions, and I had to lay off a lot of people and kind of go back to almost a profit first bootstrap mentality. So the win is I got a really incredible product built out of raising the money, but the con is that it wasn't able to kind of hit that VC scale in order to kind of keep going down that trajectory. So now at this stage, it's fun because we get to go back to that bootstrap scaling profitably type of mindset with a really good product behind us, not one that crashes once you install it on a Ryder Cup.
It's really just hard to sustain that type of growth in general. It reminds me,
Really hard.
Mikael, have you ever seen Silicon Valley, the scene at the bar where the guy is just talking to the other person of like all the things you need to do once you start raising money? I don't know if you've seen that scene before.
I have.
Yeah, it's that runs through my head. It's spot on. I know we have a couple minutes. Well, thanks for sharing your mindset and your journey. This has been really valuable. I have one last question, and I just want to point people to check out funnelytics.io to learn more. I want to talk about Funnel Daddy.
Oh, yeah. Funnel Daddy. I forgot that I told you about Funnel Daddy. Yeah.
So talk about
what
Funnel
do you want to
Daddy.
know about Funnel Daddy?
Whatever you think is relevant.
Yeah, cool. So Funnel Daddy is one of our clients and users of Funnelytics. He calls himself Funnel Daddy. It's hilarious because he actually wears a crown and he's a character. He's a really, really good guy. But he's kind of the essential person that I think about when I look at Funnelytics, because forget the name funnels and all that stuff, but really he's in the business of helping other businesses, usually in his case coaches, consultants, to really launch a strategy that's going to help them acquire customers. And he's adopted kind of this mindset of I'm going to map out the strategy for them, then I'm going to go and actually launch it. I'm going to measure the results. And with our tool, he's been able to close like $50,000 funnel builds, and then put people on $10,000 per month retainers, because again, it's about being able to communicate to your client what is going to help them get the results that they care about. And more importantly, how can you show them that the efforts and the stuff that you're putting in is actually driving those results? And if it's not, what are you going to do to fix it? And that's ultimately why we built this tool and what Funnelytics is all about. So Funnel Daddy, shout out to him.
Mikael, I want to be the first one to thank you. Everyone check out funnelytics.io. Check out more episodes of the podcast, and we'll see everyone next time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I'm feeling like $100 grand.